So once you Python as a language is basically installed on your machine, and so like you are able to access it either by the interpreter what you have been seeing, or it could be anything that is a ID, that doesn't matter. Okay. But finally, one thing we should understand, taking the language, we should know how to start playing the game with it. Okay. See, every language, I personally feel like every programming language is like a hide and seek game where the language has all the abilities and features, and you are a learner who is not having the overall control of understanding and knowing those features and facilities. So starting very small with very fundamental instructions, how many number of times you can identify every feature and every facility the language can provide you, and utilizing your language as a medium of instructions, you can start taking the control over your computers and the required automation. So every language has its own syntax, even though I've seen people debating that Python does not has any kind of strict standards with the syntax. No, every language has its own grammar. Now, one of the languages grammar could be bit difficult, and one of the language grammar could be bit simple. That's the difference. But without the adaptability of syntax, no language can exist. That's a fact. So as far as your Python is concerned, if anybody says that Python does not has any syntax, then I think it's an exaggerated statement. The thing what we can say is the syntactical rules of Python are far more easier when compared with the other languages. That's what we can say, definitely, no doubt about it. So before we just get on to the syntax, now if you're a first time beginner, you always have one kind of doubt like how I need to really start with my particular programmatical approach. Now, before you start programming, you should always consider one thing. You should make your mindset in such a way that everything that you are trying to operate with your programming languages is a problem and a solution. Be very, very clear about that. Okay. So whenever you try to work with the construct, you need to always understand, make a mindset of thinking that everything you do is a problem to solution approach. Even if you're adding two numbers also, it's a problem to solution approach. That mindset you had always keep the criteria in your mind. Okay, that's a kind of construct you need to adapt. Be very, very clear about that. Okay. So whenever you start working with the rule of implementation, you should always understand there is certain kind of approach for getting any problem to the solution. In the most fundamental levels, if I'm speaking, what the computer science basically says is we need to build something called as an algorithm. Now, if I say that in next few minutes I'll make everything of algorithm, it's exaggeration. But the very simple points what I say is, if you take any particular problem you are having with you, okay, you have certain problem, let us say that you want to really, you have identified some particular problem, let us say. And if you have identified some particular problem, then a person, as a person who has identified the problem, you should know what is that expected solution that you really want. You cannot say that, you cannot take the chance of saying that I identified a problem but I don't know the solution. You may not be knowing let us use our words very carefully, you may not be knowing the approach to get the solution, but you know the solution. Approach is what you do not know. Therefore, without knowing the solution, you can never get into a problem, first of all. So let us be very clear and consistent in our thought process, first of all. Am I clear with you? So if I am identifying a problem, means I know what I need as a solution. But the only thing is I do not know the approach to get into that particular solution. See, I entered into my education as a career into engineering, where I was basically making my mindset to be an electrical engineer, but because of the force or pressure of my family or my friends, I became a computer science engineer. Now, the simple point I want to tell you is you want to become an engineer, that is a very clear clarity with you. But the only thing is, branch was the ambiguity, and you liked electrical and you went into computer science now. Now, passing myself as a computer science engineer is my solution. I know that. Now, the only thing you're missing is the approach to pass your computer science engineering in the best way. Now, this approach is what you have to learn. Be very, very clear about this. Therefore, you should always understand every problem should fundamentally reach to its targeted solution. You need to always understand these particular facts very carefully. Therefore, if anybody is asking you what is the destiny of the problem, the destiny of the problem is to take you towards your solution. Be very, very clear about that. So this is the basic travel of any particular software engineer in the world. Okay. Now I'm just making it a criteria of saying it's a software engineer, but the existence of any of your career is basically depending on this. Say like if you say you are a doctor, then definitely you should always understand that you have to travel yourself to understand everything what as a doctor you can do to save the life of the people in the world. So that's a travel, no doubt about it. So if you take any particular application that you are operating with, that is always there. Now, no solution is straightforward. No solution is straightforward. Be very clear about that. So the final goal is to reach there. So for that, we need to understand the process and approach. The thing that we need to really understand is the process and the approach. So you pick up your particular problem and then you're trying to keep it into a proper process, and then that will take you towards a perfect solution what you're expecting. Now, if we do not have an idea on this particular process and approach, then your solution is well known to you, but you're not able to reach it. You're not able to reach it. This is the same thing that happens with the criteria and composition of your any computer science program you're writing. Now, this problem, what we are fundamentally having with this process and approach, what you're executing, what you're basically saying that you need to identify, this is basically recalculated in a computer science terminology as the solution, we call it as output. Problem is what you generally say like analysis and design is what you fundamentally need to make your problem to get through the criteria of your particular construct. Be very, very clear. Therefore, this problem fundamentally needs a proper analysis and design. Means, are you analyzing the problem and are you trying to design a criteria that can make you really understand your problem, where your solution, what you're expecting is absolutely very clear and it's straightforward in front of you. So the biggest challenge for any computer programmer is once he identifies the problem, either you identify the problem or somebody is identifying the problem, that doesn't really matters at all, because finally you're coming into this industry with a signed agreement that you can provide technically solutions with respect to your programmatical ability what you have. When somebody can explain the problem to you, be very very clear about the means, you're very clearly telling the industry that you give me an opportunity where any problem is there, that fundamental problem I can always understand, and I can give you an analysis and design of the criteria. That's what you're fundamentally trying to say. So when you take any language, you take any language, maybe we are sitting in this class and we are discussing Python, but you take any language that is existing in the world, finally you should understand that you're promising the industry after you learn the language that you have the ability to understand the problem and you can analyze and design certain constructs out of it. So this analysis and design, once you're doing, you're definitely understanding that you need some kind of components that can make the things happen now. So that's where your input phase has to be designed. You are designing one input phase, which could be data, which could be instructions, which could be anything that I don't want to elaborate it immediately here itself. But you are understanding that to make that problem to get identified and solved very perfectly, you need to find some input phase that can take the corresponding inputs and make the things happen. Now this input, what you're trying to take with that analysis and design, you're trying to keep it into a proper process and approach. So this is the area where we are definitely finalizing certain things. We are definitely finalizing certain things. There's nothing but there's an area where you are trying to say that you're designing the business logic or process logic. There's an area where you're saying that you're designing the business logic or the process logic. Where this business logic or process logic is always implemented using is fundamentally implemented by using the criteria of your computer instructions. So this way your language is coming into the picture now. And if this logic goes very properly by its nature of implementation, then technically you're getting your fundamental outputs. You're able to achieve your output what you're expecting. And that output you're giving it on any kind of front end that doesn't matter. So I can say this is the most simplest way to really make ourselves understand. A normal computer science engineer learning any kind of languages that doesn't matter. Okay, you learn any language, maybe sitting in this class, we are into a contract saying that we will start learning Python. But the only fundamental point I want to tell you is, if you are not making yourself prepare psychologically and physically to understand this basic approach, I will write some programs, you will type them, I will compile them, you will also compile them, I will execute it, you will also execute, I get some result and you get the same result. What is the fun behind this? I don't think there's any great wonder happening behind this now. So your whole lot of your existence is basically promised with highest richness and identity only when you can understand the cycle more properly and with more amount of effort with which what kind of problems you can take in real time, you can analyze, design, and put them into the corresponding outputs. So you need to just understand these particular concepts. Therefore, if I just start something like, let us learn the syntax of the language. Now, I don't want anybody sitting on that side stereotypically getting ready that I will remember where I should start a bracket, where I should end the bracket, where I should keep a comma, where I should keep a semicolon. I'm not expecting anybody to sit with that kind of fundamental focus now, because syntax of the language is always provided by the language itself. So you need to just take care of it. If you do not honor the syntax, if you do not honor the syntax of the language, your language will give you an error. It will tell you you are doing a mistake here, you please correct it. So you have some helping hand from the language interpreter or the compiler to make corrections to your syntax. So that's not the main focus. The main focus for everybody who's sitting in this session should be, am I able to understand the principles of programming, the approach of programming, the standards of programming with the language what I am trying to learn, where all these particular principles of programming and the standards what I've learned, can I put them into the rule of analysis, design, and programming to get the solutions out of that particular language. So throughout the course, are we learning the language or not is not important. Are we learning the principles of programming languages very properly or not is very important. Because what is the use? You learn some language, and when a problem is explained to you, you cannot understand the problem, you cannot analyze the problem, you cannot design the problem, you cannot model the problem towards a solution. So you need to just understand, if you look into the fundamental syntax of Python, means if you go to the core level and if you look into the syntax of your Python, that looks very complicated. For any particular problem and solution, whatever we have been speaking about on the screen just now, you need to just understand that technically your identification to the output should be very clear to you. That's what I say. Means, are you sure about the output what you want? The biggest question that comes is, what output you need. So if you're not sure about your output, there is no meaning you keep your head into the problem first of all. Means, I'll tell you one simple thing, man, okay? You are in a class of 60 students and you find that one of your classmates is really irritating you and is trolling you a lot. No, it's happening to other students or not, that's immaterial. But you identified that you are being trolled and you are being harassed and humiliated by this one particular person in your class every time. Now that irritation is really picking up in your mind, and technically you bared it, and one day you thought that I should get a solution out of it such that this person does not troll me, humiliate and harass me. Now that output is not clear to you, let us say. Now you go and talk to one of your friends saying that this person is really irritating me, man. I'm not able to bear it. And the kind of level of agony I'm having in my mind is unbearable. Your friend will simply ask you only one thing. What do you want? Tell me. He's saying that I don't know what I want, but this person is really irritating me. Then your friend is saying that no, you are expecting which kind of solution you tell me. Then we will think of how to achieve it. You say like, I don't know what's the solution, but I'm feeling that he's irritating me. Now this is an ridiculous discussion. You want to get rid of the pain in which way? Your friend now is trying to tell you, do you want me to go and warn him? Or do you expect that I need to make him become your friend? Or shall we make him get into such a kind of fear that he never tries to dare come in front of you once again? What kind of solution you're expecting? Tell me. No, I don't know what is the solution, but I'm getting irritated. Now I think your friend will get irritated now because you're not able to say the output what you're expecting. So when your output is not clear, you cannot put the inputs. When your inputs are not clear and you don't know what is the kind of output you need, you're always going to give improper inputs. You will do improper processing. You'll get improper results once again. So you find a problem. First, you try to decide what the solution you need. Don't worry about the approach. Don't worry about the design. Don't worry about the analysis. But first come to conclusion, what is the solution you need? Now, depending on the solution, what you're basically expecting as an output, your inputs and your approach and your process and everything will start. You'll get your idea very slowly. So the biggest challenge is really making conclusion that what kind of solution I need. Therefore, maybe in any programming language, first we will always try to understand the output statements. You watch very carefully. Any language you take in the world, computer science languages, first you will see that the inventor of that language, he will try to give you the first level introduction of producing outputs on the screen. Starting from machine language to anything I have seen in my career till now, all languages first they will speak about how you should get the output. Means output priority is more. Why? When I know how to present my output, then I will always understand that, okay, for this problem, here I can generate my output. So the output standards are very clear. Now, whenever you make an approach of going towards a solution, you can always make a testing. You can always go for testing whether your approach to the solution is happening or not only by looking into the outputs. That's the reason, say like you started your life with C language. You learned always an output statement first of all, printf. You came to C++. You always learned an output statement first, that is cout. The same way, whenever you're working with the criteria of your Java-like implementations also, you learn println. You're a database developer, let us say, then majority of your time you have been spending on your select statement. Why? Because that is a statement that can tell you what is the way you can transform your particular data existing in the database to get an acquired output of your choice. The same way in Python also, if I'm starting my output statement, I'm very clear. We are starting only for the purpose of understanding where I can present my output, where that output can always give me an instruction, whether from my input to the processing is happening properly or not. Therefore, output statements are not for something like you just print your name and you feel happy. The reason we have output statements is to check out our experimental state of analysis on the problem is giving the correct results or not. So whenever we start working with Python, we generate the outputs in Python. We generate the outputs in Python using print statement. Now, I want you to have very clear clarity on certain things now. In general, we call it as print statement, keeping interpreter in the mind. Because we are always working with only one statement of execution at a time at the interpreter. But coming to the latest versions of Python, okay, starting from Python technologically 3, print is no more considered to be like a statement. Print is actually a function. Okay, previous versions of Python up to 2, majority of the operations you're doing in your Python were either operators or statements. But Python 3 comes with a flavor where everything is an object and operates through the methods. I'm making my words very clear. everything in Python is an object and it operates with a method. So print is basically one method, or you can say it's a function that is basically used for generating your outputs in your Python like environment. If you go to the core syntax of this Python print statements or anything, we really get highly feared because that statement looks so complicated through its understanding. Now, generally, you don't find this particular statement in the general discussions because there's a syntax that is provided in the core documentation of your Python if you go technically deep into it. So technically, you should understand that the symbol is indicating that any kind of output you're generating out of your print statement is basically getting into one kind of object called as print underscore statement in Python, which is configured very properly to the output device to which your system is basically operating. Now here you're having your print as a function in third version and as a statement in your second version. And these all things what you see here may look very complicated for a first time beginner, and sometimes even for the programmers coming from other languages, they may come to a conclusion that I have never seen any kind of uh, output statement with such a lot of complicated criteria of tokens and components in the syntax. But just don't worry, okay? I just want to show you this syntax only to make you aware that one single operation with print statement can do many number of things without your knowledge. So what exactly those expressions mean, that asterisk symbol here really represents, and these are nothing but the separators or delimiters, and then what exactly this kind of symbol to the operator really means, these all things you'll start understanding as we go down through the construct. Therefore, if people seriously get into the Python, digging deep into its actual core, it looks very complicated. But we don't need to really worry about it. It is only a syntax that is showing you what all activities your print statement or print function can do in Python. And that's something we'll adapt it practically. When we go for implementation of this in a practical state, technically we don't feel that complication. Anyhow, time tells us. But let me say, like, I want to just produce some output on my screen, which is basically a fundamental concept to start with any language. Then you should understand that there are two variations of syntaxes now. Okay. Now, generally, we don't have second version as support by Python, so we don't need to really worry about the second version thought process. But there are certain projects even today which are getting converted from second to third version in the industry. In such cases, the very fundamental things in second version, you should have an idea. So if you just check in your second version of your Python, we just call print and we try to provide the corresponding operational output. If it is a string in double quotes or single quotes, there's a number directly where we don't have anything. We don't have anything that is representing this output by using any kind of brackets like this. Okay. We don't have anything that's going with brackets like this up to second version. Print with minimum one space, you have to give your message there, or you should give your output whatever you're expecting. No brackets and no semicolons. So some kind of boilerplate text that is expected to be part of your language is always they were eliminated. But when you come to the latest version of a Python, starting from third version, what they have done is they made everything as a method in Python associated to the objects. Means they start making Python work on absolutely core fundamental principles of object orientation to standardize Python to fit to every requirement that is arising in the industry. So some some kind of limitation. I say like some things that look like bad habits in Python, they have been eliminated. And Python 3 started becoming standardized at par with the current trend of the languages that take the overall control. So that's how, starting from third version, whenever you're working in, your print should be in the same style, but anything you want to operate, you'll keep it in the brackets. Okay, anything you are trying to work with the construct, it is basically nothing but it is operating within the brackets. That's the only difference. Therefore, people who think that old version and new version of Python is totally different, nothing. Certain small standardized rules have changed. Therefore, I worked in Python 2. I can migrate myself into Python 3 very easily. You worked in Python 3, but suddenly your luck favored, you went into the industry, you have been given a responsibility of handling one older version project to be converted into a newer version of your Python. Then you just don't need to worry. Make a cross comparison document that is available with Python people. Follow the document and you'll understand how to categorically make a transformational change from older version to new version. So there's nothing like too complicated and too critical that's really going to trouble you when you're dealing with your Python as a criteria. So you should always understand few points. You should always understand few points when you're dealing with a Python. Python functions, classes, and variables are absolutely case sensitive. Okay. So when you're working with a Python, you can finally say like it's a case sensitive language. Therefore, uppercase identifiers, lowercase identifiers are different, even though their name is same. So that's the area where your first level work will begin, and why majority of the time people feel convenient with Python as a constructive advantage, means why the world really marks so much about Python and speaks about it. The simple fundamental reason is syntactically you're not binded very seriously in Python, and its syntax goes like a normal English language flow that makes you become an expert by shortest amount of time on the language, but not on the problem and solution. Every problem to its approach of the solution is challenging. If anybody says that you can make wonderful solutions in Python, that statement is true, but you can make wonderful solutions in Python very easy. Now that statement may not be correct. Why? Because until you do not understand the rule of the language very effectively and the criteria of the algorithmic standardizations very effectively, you cannot give solutions so easily. Therefore, if I say sitting on this side, you will do wonders in Python, that's wrong. How much you can do as wonders in Python depends on understanding of the language and putting your effort into the problem solution approach. For that, I will help you. I will help you time and again by putting into multiple diversified thought processes. But you have to come along with me. Okay. Somewhere you cannot say, sir, this program is looking too critical. Industry is more critical. So you can take 20% of the criticality from your classrooms. You can always achieve that 80% of the complications very easily when your industry is putting in front of you. So for any relaxed souls that are sitting in my sessions, I can definitely tell you, you are not going to make anything too great. So let us just start with starting our Python interpreter. Okay. Now here in the search bar, you will always type CMD. Now I always expect you to operate from the command prompt. Later on, we will see how IDs can take advantage. I'm not going to keep my hand into IDs at any point of time immediately, because when your hands-on is not very clear and confident to you can never get that confidence at any point of time when you start working in IDs. There is no guarantee the IDE in which you are working, the same IDE your industry should follow. Therefore, if you are good in core, you can adapt any IDE at any point of time. So just type CMD in that particular search bar and then press your enter key, which fundamentally opens the command prompt to you. Normally, this command prompt is opening in a particular directory, which may be looking almost all same. The only thing is this name could be changing in your computer. Either it is Linux or it is Unix or it is Windows or Mac. When you get connected to your command prompt, you should always remember that in general terminology of operating systems I'm speaking, okay, not only exclusive to Windows, okay. When we connect to the command prompt, or console, the operating system by default redirects control to a specific directory where this directory is called as home directory of the current user. Okay, are you getting it? This is called as a home directory of the current user. So this home directory is like a private space for that particular user to keep all his work, whatever he's trying to do, all his work he can keep in this particular directory, which is basically like a private space for his information. In Linux or Unix, your admins will redirect you exactly to that location where you have to put your code, you have to keep your programs and everything by configuring that particular directory in one special kind of file called as profile file in your particular operating system. In your personal machine, you don't need to do all that stuff now. Okay, in industry, they know very well. You connect to operating system, you type your username and password, you should go to which particular directory, the admins are taking care of it. But in a personal machine, when you're working in Windows or your Linux or Unix or anything, you are automatically redirected to your home directory. Now, this home directory is your personal space where you can keep all your programs and start working with them. Now, what I suggest is these particular home directories are not bad in Windows. In Linux or Unix, you have to work in that way. We are not talking about it. But in Windows, what happens is this home directory management by Windows is totally going to be in a different kind of style. Therefore, suddenly something goes wrong in your Windows, it is this home directory that gets affected, and there is always many a number of chances to lose your particular work that is existing in the home directory, and recovery may not be so much possible for you if you do not know Windows administration. And you'll just get frustrated. So like you've written some 200, 300 examples and you practice some 300, 400 exercises from your side, and the whole source code is there in this home directory, and suddenly one day home directory is not communicating with you. Windows is communicating with you, but something in the home directory you're missing, and your luck favored, it's your programs you're missed. You'll get absolutely irritated. So what I suggest is better try to move yourself into a particular type of drive and a directory where you can keep all your work, what you're trying to do, and then that work you can take as backup anytime, immediately and instantaneously. And if your Windows is getting corrupted, the directory may not be an area where it could get corrupted so easily. At least the backup functionalities could be possible for us, even if something goes wrong. These are all my suggestions. When you go to industry, this is none of your headache. Wherever you are given permission in that directory, you have to work, no doubt about it. So this directory is your home directory. And if your Python is properly configured, in your environment, from anywhere, your environment variables of a Python have been configured very properly. From anywhere you type the command called as Python, your Python prompt should come to you. Okay, be very clear. I am working on Python 3.6 because I consider this as the more stable version that's there. Now, here the question comes from students like, sir, I seriously installed Python 3.8, but even then my interpreter is showing 3.6.4. Actually, that is only a labeling construction. Once you have installed, you are already configured. So the only thing you should get worried is if it is showing you 2 or 3. After that, subversions doesn't matter at all. When you put your imports will automatically start getting migrated to the corresponding latest to the subversion that is happening. Okay, am I clear with you? Because if you're having already older versions of Python and you have installed say like 3.5 long back, you upgrade it to 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, then technically you're working on 3.8 only, but when it's starting, it could be looking through the construct of the 3.6 or something like that. Okay, am I clear with you? So that subversion doesn't really should bother you. Now, whenever you're working in Python, we don't need to write too much of statements because the print is not always essential, because Python interpreter adapts your basic interpreted operations directly. So like I'm just trying to say, I want to give a message like, hello, we are in the world of Python. Now, where people majority of the time say that Python can understand the data types dynamically. Yes or no? That's what we said 24 hours back. I hope so. Am I correct? Now, you and I know that this is definitely a statement of string. If Python can understand the data types dynamically by nature, if you take that statement as Python can understand the data and data types dynamically by nature, then the first level confusion and the criteria of ambiguity we get when we take statements as it is that are given by language is, you just watch when I'm pressing my enter key, this will be a frustrating point for us when we don't take the statements given by the language by understanding its technicalities. Now here people generally they get misguided. I'm telling you, just watch very carefully. It is just misguiding you by saying that because of this exclamation symbol, there is some error. That's how it's indicating. Do you agree with me? Now, suppose say like we don't understand the language very effectively and I'm going and removing that exclamation and I'm pressing my enter key. Watch carefully. Now, technically, your particular pointer that is pointing the error has shifted now. Imagine that you're not understanding that and you're trying to go back once again and you're trying to remove this V because it's saying that that V is a problem now. Then you're pressing enter key. Now you'll find once again an error going here. In this way, you'll remove your whole statement. Therefore, language rules have to be understood properly. You cannot expect language to give you clarity by every point to the point of its existence. So the basic criteria you should always understand when you're working through the construct of your Python is Python interpreter or Python language cannot understand the strings directly. Be very clear. They cannot understand the strings directly. Now, sir, what about a character? If suppose I'm typing only A and I'm pressing my enter key. Now, technologically, you can just what this error is looking something very different than the previous one. So who says that Python is an easy language and it doesn't use any errors? Only when your Python gives an error, you'll understand what is its complication. Till you don't get any error, you'd never feel its complications. I want to start my session with an error because you should understand the criteria of the impact you should have. Means any language has some length of its syntax, and the language may not be going deep into the explanation of its syntax always. So when you are working with your Python, always remember, when you want to basically represent any strings, you either represent your string in single quotes. Only when you keep your criteria of the string in single quotes or double quotes, it can identify it. So there is a constructional rule. You need to always understand that I'm saying double quotes. So either a single quote or double quote. Now in Python, we have something called as triple double quotes. This is also there. So what is the difference between these three? We'll understand. Let us not worry first of all, okay? Let us not keep ourselves into the core immediately. But one thing is very clear. When you're dealing with your Python, you can keep your strings either in single quotes or in double quotes, or you can even put it into a triple quote construct. But finally, you watch Python internally by default. You represent your string in any way. It considers that single quote as a default representation. Are you getting me? So there are certain kinds of confusions like, sir, I should keep my string in single quote or double quotes or triple quotes now. Leave that on my shoulders. When I come seriously into the string management, I'll tell you. You don't need to worry about that. Till then, whichever way you want to represent, you represent it. Okay. Now, in between, you'll have some kind of problems, errors, and everything. Whatever is coming, accept it. Okay. See, if an error is coming here, let us accept this error. If we accept this error, then only you can understand what you should do to avoid that particular error. So errors should always encourage us. Every error in your program should be encouraging for us, because that error will teach us that something that is irrelevant to the language we are not understanding, and it will make us get through the corrections. Try to understand the factors first of all. So within Python, we don't need a print statement technically for printing the output. This is another kind of conclusion that people will come to. Actually, the output statement is saying that you need to use print, yes or no? But did we use any print here? That's how when people are working with Python at Python prompt, and when people are shifting with Python into scripting and programming, they have two different versions and variations of statements. Therefore, working with interpreter is one kind of experience. And let me tell you very frankly, anything you do at the interpreter, you do it with a programmatical approach. Don't blindly go with the interpreter oriented approach. That's how many times you find people saying Python is easy. Why? See, you want to print the output. You just typed it. Now I can give you one conclusion. You're all beginners. Therefore, I can give one conclusion saying that in Python, we don't need print statement. Will you not take that statement directly as it is because I am saying it? But after some time, you find that without a print, your life cannot exist. And that's a nightmare. So here, what you should understand is when we are giving the statement to Python interpreter, the console is taking your input, what we said that we will give, and the output we are expecting is that statement to be there. But without your knowledge, Python is understanding your input and looking into that input, what exactly it is, calling up all its language library. From that library, it is implementing its own business logic. It's implementing its own business logic by calling the print statement internally. It is doing the job of calling the print statement internally, which it's not showing you. Means interpreter is readjusting your code by its interpreter intelligence. So what I say is, whether you accept or not, internally, that print was actually happening without your knowledge. So keeping that print will make you more clear. When I kept the statement as a single quoted string, into my print function. My print function is returning exactly my output without any single quotes embedded to that. Are you catching me? So imagine I give you one statement saying that in Python we don't need to learn print. Now you accept it. After a few days I say now you should learn print. Now that's where the confusion starts. So your interpreter is internally operating by understanding the type, and since you did not tell anything, it is having that intelligence that okay, this should be an output, and it is producing the output as it is. The same way, you just watch very carefully. I'm saying something like 235. Now I gave I just gave 3 digits there. As a human being, I know that they are the digits. I'm not putting any kind of information to my system. I'm neither saying whether it is an input, I'm neither saying it's an output. And I'm pressing my enter key, let us say. Now this way the student says, sir, I got an error when I gave my string, but when I gave any number, it's not giving me any error. So Python interpreter is having intelligence to differentiate the criteria of the data very properly. Is what you should understand here is when we gave anything like a string and we pressed enter key, we got the error. Python is always expecting that the standardized values for input at the Python prompt are always numerical values. Because this is not identified under the family of numbers, you got an error. Am I clear with you? Now here understanding the language is more important, or we are expecting our thought and idea should be understood by the language. So as a developer, you should understand your language. You cannot expect your language to understand what you are trying to do. And it's ridiculous if anybody is raising a question, sir, when numbers can be accepted, why not the characters or strings can be accepted? See, Python's rule is very simple, man. It can adapt any numerical input directly. That's how it has designed that interpreter. When these values are falling under the control of the requirement of a numerical identification, it is accepting it. When it is going beyond that numerical identification, it is failing. Therefore, it told you when you really want a string or character, why don't you keep that single quote and give me? It's basically saying that. In the same construct, if suppose say like I'm trying to say 234 plus 453. Now I'm giving numbers, no doubt, with a symbol that is mathematically addition for you and me. But in general common sense, it's fundamentally like one character of data. But technically, Python has its intelligence. A numerical input with another numerical input with a symbol of this. Is it a symbol which is practically registered in mathematics universally? It's a non-registered symbol in mathematics. What is your opinion? It's a registered symbol in mathematics. So technically Python interpreter has been designed in such a way that it can understand your requirement, it is adding and it's giving you the result. It has that ability because this is a valid symbol as to the rule of mathematics. Now, if this intelligence Python is having and you are utilizing it, that's okay. But what great wonder you have done here, because language is doing its job by understanding that in an automated state. But the same thing, suppose say like I'm trying to say, now I'm giving two strings according to our knowledge, and we are expecting that add these two strings means concatenate. In your idea and my idea, it is nothing but concatenate. But technically you just watch, I'm not representing the corresponding strings properly into single quotes or double quotes. It is basically trying to think that this air is one variable. According to Python, any combination of characters you provide without any single quotes, it will think that it is one variable, it is one identifier. So whenever you're getting this name error, you should always understand that Python is thinking that you are missing that variable by declaration. Am I clear with you? The same output you watch, I'm getting into the construct and I'm saying air in single quotes with that plus symbol, and I'm saying plane with another single quote, and I'm pressing my enter key. Just watch. Now it understood that you want to concatenate these two strings because string representation has been done by you and you're using the symbol called as plus. So Python is understanding that the end user is expecting that he wants to concatenate these two strings. It's not this operator is behaving dynamically by its intelligence by understanding the type of the data that is supplied to it. Now, when your language is having this kind of intelligence, now your language is really intelligent. That's okay. Then why we should feel happy? So Python's intelligence cannot give you jobs. Let me make it very clear. Python's intelligence cannot give you jobs. Understanding the intelligence of the Python, how much of your intelligence you can apply to get the best solutions out of it in the most easiest and fastest way can make you get the jobs and keep you into the jobs. Therefore, my final question is, you're sitting in these sessions for learning Python or experiencing Python. Decide that. Sir, I want to learn Python. Industry doesn't need you. While I'm learning Python, I want to experience Python and I want to get solutions out of Python. You are 100% ready for industry. Keep that spirit, because we are only going through these sessions to get the solution oriented mindset. So for people who learn languages, they can always do what the language says. For people who really concentrate on getting the solutions, they will always learn the language to get the solutions, not the outputs that are proposed by the language. Even though it was a very, very simple discussion today with you, but I hope you can understand the intensity with which we are going to think and start working as we go down through the course. That spirit of intensity of getting solutions is not there with you. I think I'm not the correct person for you. So keep all that fundamental spirit and start developing a passion towards a solution provider where you have ample number of opportunities with highest amount of money in the industry today. Anyhow, time tells us how best we can think by solutions. Let us see what exactly is the way we will extend our discussions on these things slowly. Anyhow, we started kicking the ball. We will start playing the game in such a way that we can push that into the goal effectively. But it happens day by day on its own priority. So just make yourself comfortable to type something at your Python interpreter. By the time I'll tell you how you can keep yourself into Python scripts, how we should design scripts and start operating with them, slowly we'll start enhancing ourselves. Let us see what's waiting for us in the next 24 hours. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend. I'm signing off from this side. So just as information, today from 4 to 4:30, I'm available in Facebook Live with one of the person by name Karthik, where he will be, where I and Karthik will be speaking with one another on the trends and the requirements of software industry for the next generation. So you can just catch me through my Facebook Live from 4 to 4:30 today. Thank you very much. Once again with you tomorrow. Have a nice day, gentlemen.